Before I go into story, the review is spoiler free, so you don't have to be afraid of getting story spoiled for you. You play as Jack Pepper, an ex-military and ex-police officer now working as a private investigator in Mouse Town in a noir-inspired setting. But despite the detective setup, you're not really solving the cases yourself. The game is mostly about moving through levels, shooting enemies, chasing leads, and collecting the clues along the way. The story kicks off with the missing magician case, which basically sets everything in motion. And while the story itself isn't the strongest part of the game, it's still fun enough to follow. Now, what actually stood out more than the story itself was the writing. Even though the dialogue seems serious, it is constantly filled with mouse jokes, cheese puns, and pop culture references that keeps breaking the tone in a good way. A few examples that really stood out for me: there's a side mission called Oh Yes, They Float, where you basically help a kid to get a balloon, which is a clear reference to It, and that being one of my favorite Stephen King books, I found it really fun. There's also a Ratatouille reference that feels kind of ironic in the best way.
Jack, I once printed your story about a rat burglar who swore a tiny mushroom alien on his head was steering him like a meat puppet.
And I'm sure I missed quite a few others too, but those were the ones that stuck with me the most. And what really helps all of that land is the presentation. The music constantly gives you that old black and white film feeling, and the voice acting fits that same vibe really well.
Police blockade. They sure went big on this one.
So even if the story isn't super deep, the way it's presented still pulls you into the world. Now, moving on to the pacing of the game. The main story takes about 12 hours, which for me personally felt a bit bloated towards the end. I think trimming maybe 1 or 2 missions would have helped the pacing quite a bit. But at the same time, if you don't rush it and instead just play a mission or 2 per day or every couple of days, it actually feels a lot better. Now let's talk about the gameplay itself, because that's where the game really settles into what it is. As you'd expect from boomer shooter, you're going through levels and shooting pretty much everything in sight, while moving towards your objective. Combat feels solid overall, and it's satisfying to shoot enemies and see their death animations play out. While I was playing, I did notice one small thing. I just wished headshots felt a bit more impactful than they were, because even basic enemies didn't go down from a fully upgraded pistol's headshot. It isn't a deal breaker or anything like that, just something I noticed. Enemy variety is pretty solid too. Different enemies show up depending on the level, and that naturally pushes you to switch weapons depending on what you're fighting. On top of that, combat isn't just limited to guns either. You can go in with melee attacks, use throwables like dynamite stick, or even use the environment, like dropping a piano on enemies' heads or shooting explosive barrels at the right time. So there's enough variety there to keep combat from feeling repetitive. And that variety continues in the level design too. Each level feels pretty distinct. You've got things like Haunted Mansion with ghosts and skeleton enemies, more vertical platforming style levels, and even an underwater section. So there's a good amount of variety, and it keeps things from blending together. There's also a small structure layer outside of missions worth mentioning. Even though the game feels linear overall, you can actually choose the order of some of the missions. It doesn't really change that much, but it does add a small break where you're driving from your office to the mission location. There's also a hub area, and that is where a lot of systems can come together. And there's your main office, where you go and pin your clues to the investigation board. Then there's a cafe where you play a baseball minigame or talk to bartender to get side quests. Also, there's a little workshop area where you can upgrade your weapons. This is a pretty important point, and after you update your investigation board with clues, it's worth talking to all the main NPCs around the area, because they can give you side quests and rewards later. Now, the game is not all about the combat, because exploration also plays a quite big role. You'll find optional clues you can pin to your investigation board, along with collectibles, like newspapers, comics, baseball cards, statues, and weapon schematics. And I actually liked how collectibles were handled here, because they're not just here for completion. Most of them actually matter. Schematics upgrade your weapons, newspapers and comics add extra world context, and baseball cards are used in a minigame back at the cafe. So even when you go off the main path, you usually get something useful out of it. Some of these collectibles are hidden really well, but if you miss newspapers or baseball cards, you can still buy them from the vendor later, which helps a lot. Now, tied into that, there's a progression system. As you play the game, you unlock traversal abilities like double jump, wall run, or glide, and they slowly open up how you move through the levels. And weapon progression is solid too, because you receive new weapons as you play the game. And by the end of it, you can have up to 12 weapons, many of which can be upgraded using schematics you find. So overall, the game does keep building on itself in small ways as you go. Now, this is where things get a bit more interesting, my 100% completion experience. One of the biggest issues is that there is no mission replay. And for a game built around separate levels like this, that really feels like something that should be there. What that means is, if you miss something important, you risk having to replay large parts of the game. You can work around it, because game does give you 50 save slots, so my advice would be to make a new save in the office before every mission, and keep one active slot while playing the level itself. That way, if something goes wrong, you won't lose hours of progress. Now the achievements themselves, most of them are pretty straightforward. A lot of them come from gathering all collectibles, clues, completing all 14 side quests in a single run, and you will probably naturally get environmental kill achievements just by playing. There are a couple of missable achievements through interactions too. One is punching the agitator outside of your office. This one's pretty hard to miss because it gives you a prompt, but another one is more annoying. In one of the levels, you have to kick a massive fish during a quest to get the achievement. This one doesn't give any kind of prompt, so you just basically have to randomly try to kick this fish. Now, a lot of these difficulties could be avoided by using the guide, and I definitely recommend doing so. But what guide doesn't help with is the baseball minigame achievement, where you need to get 30 wins. This felt like the biggest grind in a way, because each match takes around 4 minutes, which means you will spend over 2 hours of just this. What was really annoying is that even if the match is already decided, it still plays all 10 rounds, which makes it feel longer than it needs to be. Now, talking from personal experience, the baseball wasn't the most frustrating part for me. The real issue came from playing game blindly the first time and failing to complete one side quest. That meant I have to do a second full playthrough to get all the side quests. And that's exactly what I tried to do. So on my second attempt, I started using a guide for the side quests. But then about 3 hours into that run, I realized I missed another side quest. This one came from Tammy Tumbler, the girl who upgrades your weapons. The problem is, normally, side quest NPCs show up on your compass whenever they have side quests ready for you. But for this one, her icon never appeared, even though she had the quest available. So unless you decide to manually talk to her, you will miss the side quests entirely. And that's what forced me to restart the game again from the beginning. Thankfully, that third time was a charm, and the final cleanup run only took me around 4.5 hours, because by then I already knew where everything was. So while the base gameplay loop is fun, the 100% experience can definitely get frustrating if you're not using the guide and you miss something important. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's summarize everything into positives and negatives. The art style is easily one of the best parts of the game. It feels unique, and the hand-drawn animations gives the game a lot of personality. And on top of that, the writing is often funny and full of references. That keeps the tone light. On the negative side though, the game does start to overstay its welcome towards the end. Even with weapon progression, the core gameplay doesn't really evolve enough to stay fresh for the entire runtime. And if you add the 100% requirements, it can definitely become tiring. Which brings me to final conclusion. I did enjoy Mouse P.I. for hire. I like simple boomer shooters from time to time, and this one does have some unique charm to it, and is worth playing in my opinion. However, if you're not a fan of shooters, and you looked into the game expecting it to be a detective story, where you solve investigations and work through the puzzles potentially, this isn't it. And that's it for this review. If you enjoy completionist style breakdowns like this, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Soma signing out.